My name is Margaret Johnson. I'm 60 years old, and if you had met me 35 years ago, you wouldn't recognize the woman I am today. Back then I was trapped, lost in the grip of alcohol and pills. I'd wake up every morning with the same promise. Today, I'll stop. By nightfall, I was drowning in the same poison. Addiction makes you a liar, not just to others, but to yourself. I lost friends, jobs, and almost my family. My own children avoided me, afraid of what version of their mother they would find that day. One night, after stumbling in the rain outside a gas station, I looked at my reflection in the glass door. Hollow eyes, ashen skin. I whispered, "Is this how it ends?" That was the first moment I realized no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. I checked into a rehab center. The first week was hell. My hands shook, my body screamed, and my pride was crushed. But one of the counselors, an old veteran named Frank, told me something I've never forgotten. Pain is temporary. Quitting is forever. That line became my weapon. I wrote it on scraps of paper and taped it to my mirror. Whenever I wanted to give up, I'd stare at those words until the storm passed. Recovery wasn't a straight road. I relapsed twice. Each time I hated myself a little more. But eventually I learned that relapse isn't failure. It's feedback. I had to study my triggers like a scientist. Loneliness, payday Fridays, family fights. I built strategies. Call a friend, attend a meeting, take a long walk instead of pouring a drink. Slowly, I built a system stronger than my cravings. When I finally got sober, I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to rebuild. I started small, baking pies in my kitchen and selling them at church fairs. People loved them. Orders grew. I rented a tiny bakery storefront, then another. Within 10 years, Maggie's Pies became a regional brand. Today we have factories, hundreds of employees, and my grandkids run around our headquarters like it's a playground. Looking back, addiction taught me something priceless. Discipline. If I could fight my own demons every single day, then no competitor, no economic crash, no failed recipe could scare me. Business is just another kind of battle. Except now, I fight with focus, not fear. So if you're listening to this, remember, your lowest moment can become your foundation. Don't let shame chain you. Don't let mistakes define you. At 60 years old, I sit here not as a broken addict, but as a grandmother, an entrepreneur, and a living reminder that no matter how deep you fall, you can rise. When people ask me how I went from a broken addict to a business owner, I tell them it wasn't luck. It was choices, made one painful step at a time. See, in recovery, they teach you to take life one day at a time. But when I stepped into business, I realized that lesson was gold. I didn't have to build an empire overnight. I just had to make today's choices count. I remember when my bakery was nothing but a tiny shop with peeling paint and a second-hand oven that broke down every other week. Some days I sold only 3 pies. 3. And at night, my old demons whispered, "You're not good enough. Quit. You'll never make it." That's when I leaned on the same principle I learned in sobriety. When the craving hits, don't believe the voice in your head. Just take the next right step. For me, the next step was showing up at 4 a.m., flour on my hands, refusing to give up. In America, we love the story of the self-made man. But let me tell you, it's never just one person. Recovery taught me the power of community. In the same way I needed sponsors and meetings, I needed mentors and customers. I treated every customer like they were family. I remembered their names, their favorite pie flavors, their stories. That connection became my secret ingredient. People don't just buy pies. They buy trust, love, and a piece of your heart. But it wasn't all sweet. There were lawsuits, dishonest partners, and a financial crash in 2008 that nearly wiped me out. I could have thrown in the towel, but I remembered something my sponsor once told me. The storm will always come, Margaret. The question is, have you built a shelter? My shelter was discipline. I cut costs, worked longer hours, and reminded myself I had survived withdrawals, detox, and nights alone crying in my car. Compared to that, bankruptcy was just another challenge. Little by little, things turned. I diversified. Cafes, packaged pies in supermarkets, online orders. The business grew beyond anything I imagined. But more than the money, it was the purpose that saved me. Every pie carried my story. Every employee I hired was a chance to give someone else hope, especially those fighting their own demons. I made it a rule. If you're willing to work, I'll give you a chance, even if you have a past like mine. So here's what I've learned. Whether it's addiction or business, success isn't about never falling. It's about standing up one more time than you fall. At 60, I sit here sipping coffee, watching trucks loaded with Maggie's pies head out across the country. And I smile, not because I became rich, but because I proved to myself and to anyone listening that broken pieces can still be baked into something whole, something beautiful. There's something I wish more people understood. Success doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. My addiction will always be part of me. Even after decades of sobriety, I still hear the echoes. When stress piles up, when life feels unfair, there's a little voice that says, one drink won't hurt. But here's the truth. One is never just one. It's a doorway back to the hell I crawled out of. So instead of trying to silence that voice, I learned to answer it. I say, thank you for reminding me who I used to be, but I'm not her anymore. That practice, my friend, is what keeps me free. And that same mindset works in business. Failure, doubt, rejection, they don't disappear. They knock at your door every day. The trick is to face them, not fear them. When we expanded to our third location, the landlord doubled the rent overnight. I panicked. For a week, I couldn't sleep. Old fears whispered, you'll lose everything. But instead of running, I sat down with my team. We brainstormed, we cut waste, we pushed new recipes. And within 3 months, we were making double the profit. The lesson? Fear is just an invitation to grow. I also learned that money doesn't heal the soul. At one point, when the business finally started booming, I bought a big house, a shiny car, and all the things I thought would fill the emptiness. But every night, lying in bed, I still felt the same hole inside. That's when I realized recovery gave me freedom, but purpose gives me peace. So I shifted my focus. Instead of asking, how much can I earn? I began asking, how much can I give? I started funding scholarships for kids whose parents struggled with addiction. I donated pies to homeless shelters. And I began speaking at recovery meetings again, this time not as a broken woman, but as living proof that you can rebuild from ashes. That's when I felt whole. You see, success without service is just another kind of prison. Now let me share something practical. Every storm in life needs an anchor. For me, my anchors are gratitude and routine. Every morning before I touch my phone or step into the bakery, I write down 3 things I'm thankful for. Some days it's simple. I woke up. My hands are steady. My grandchildren are healthy. Gratitude turns what you have into enough, and enough is where peace lives. So if you're watching this, don't just chase wealth. Don't just chase sobriety, chase meaning. At 60, I'm not just proud of the empire I built. I'm proud of the person I became building it. Addiction was my prison, but discipline, faith, and service became my freedom. And I'll tell you this, if I can do it, so can you. When I look back, I see 2 versions of myself. The woman who was enslaved by her addiction, and the woman who fought tooth and nail to become free. And the bridge between them wasn't magic. It was small, painful, consistent actions stacked over time. That's a truth I want everyone to understand. Change doesn't happen in a flash. It happens in quiet mornings when you choose to get up, when you choose to stay sober, when you choose to work even though no one is watching. In the business world, people often ask me about the secret to success. They expect me to talk about marketing strategies or financial tricks. But here's the truth. My greatest business strategy came straight from recovery. Humility. See, addiction made me arrogant in the worst way. I thought I could control everything, that I didn't need help, that I could drink just one more and still keep my life together. That arrogance nearly killed me. In recovery, I learned humility, the courage to say, I can't do this alone. When I built my company, I carried that same humility. I surrounded myself with people smarter than me. Accountants, bakers, managers, each of them filled gaps. I couldn't, and I gave them the respect I once denied others. Humility doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable, because it opens doors pride would keep shut. Of course, there were battles along the way. I'll never forget the day a competitor tried to sabotage me by spreading rumors that my pies weren't fresh. My first instinct was anger, old anger, the kind that used to drive me straight to a bottle. But I remembered the words of an old sponsor. Never wrestle with pigs, Margaret. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it. Instead of fighting dirty, I doubled down on quality. I invited customers into the kitchen. Let them see every pie made fresh. Transparency turned the storm into a spotlight. Sales doubled. Integrity, not revenge, became my weapon. And let me share this. Forgiveness is also part of building an empire. I had to forgive myself for the years I lost. I had to forgive those who walked away from me, even when I was desperate for their love. Without forgiveness, success is hollow. It's just a bigger cage. At 60, as I walk through my bakery headquarters and hear the laughter of employees who now feel like family, I realize something powerful. My empire isn't built of bricks, ovens, or dollars. It's built of second chances. Every pie carries the message that no one is too broken to rise again. So here's my lesson for you. Whether you're battling addiction, starting a business, or simply trying to survive another day, don't underestimate the power of small steps, humility and integrity. They won't just change your life. They'll build a foundation strong enough to hold an empire. As I grew older, I realized that building a business was never really about pies. It was about people. Addiction had once made me selfish. Every thought, every action revolved around my next fix. Sobriety flipped that script. I discovered that when you live only for yourself, you stay empty. But when you live to lift others, you overflow. That principle became the heartbeat of my company. I made it a policy to hire folks that others wouldn't give a chance to. Men just out of prison, women fresh out of rehab, young kids who had dropped out of school. On paper, they looked like risks, but to me, they looked like reflections of my old self. Someone desperate for one, shot to prove they weren't just their mistakes. And you know what? Those risks became some of my best employees. People who've walked through fire bring a strength you can't teach in any classroom. One man, David, came to me fresh out of recovery, hands trembling as he filled out his job application. He told me he'd been turned away 20 times because of his past. I looked him in the eye and said, if you show up, work hard, and stay honest, you'll have a place here. Today, David manages one of our biggest bakeries. Stories like his remind me that empires aren't measured in money. They're measured in lives rebuilt. But make no mistake, leadership is heavy. There were times I wanted to run from responsibility. When employees fought, when bills piled up, when customers complained, I felt the weight pressing on me. Old Margaret would have drowned that pressure in a bottle. New Margaret learned another tool from recovery. Pause. In AA, we're taught to pause when agitated. So I started doing the same in business. Before reacting, before making a rash decision, I'd pause, breathe, pray, and then respond. That habit alone saved me from disasters countless times. Here's another truth success doesn't protect you from storms. It prepares you to weather them. My company faced a fire once that destroyed an entire warehouse. Millions in damages. Reporters showed up. Competitors circled like vultures. But I gathered my employees in the parking lot, covered in ashes, and told them, this is not the end. We'll rebuild together. And we did. Stronger, faster, more united than before. Now at 60, when I hold my grandchild on my lap and tell her bedtime stories, I don't just tell fairy tales. I tell her my story. The messy, painful, beautiful truth that life is not about never falling, but about rising every single time. Because one day she'll face her own storms. And I want her to remember her grandmother didn't just bake pies. She baked hope. So, if you're listening, here's the lesson. Don't just chase success. Chase significance. Build something that outlives you. Because when you're gone, no one will remember your bank account, but they'll never forget the lives you touched. The older I get, the more I understand that time is the most valuable currency we have. When I was addicted, I wasted years. Years I can never get back. And for a long time, that haunted me. I'd sit alone and think about birthdays I missed, Graduations I skipped. The broken promises I left scattered behind me. Shame nearly chained me forever. But one day, a mentor told me something that set me free. Margaret, stop counting the years you lost and start investing the years you have left. That became my new mission. Every day I ask myself, how can I use this time wisely? Sometimes it means running the business. Sometimes it means sitting on the porch with my granddaughter. Sometimes it means visiting a recovery group just to remind others that they're not alone. Purpose isn't found in one grand moment. It's built in the way you spend each hour. In business, I use that same principle. Early on, I obsessed over competition. Who was opening new shops? Who was stealing market share? But over time, I realized that comparing yourself is just another addiction. You end up chasing shadows instead of building your own light. So I stopped worrying about what others were doing and focused on serving my people better every single day. That shift changed everything. Customers felt the difference. Employees felt the difference. And the business grew naturally because it was rooted in authenticity, not fear. I also learned the importance of legacy. Money can vanish. Buildings can burn. But values, that's what lasts. I wrote down 10 principles that guide every decision in my company. Honesty, service, discipline, gratitude, second chances, quality, community, humility, perseverance, and love. We post them in every bakery. New hires memorize them. And when tough choices come, we measure them against those values. That way, even when I'm gone, Maggie's pies will still taste of integrity. But let me be honest, aging isn't easy. My body isn't as strong as it used to be. Some mornings my knees ache. My hands tremble when I roll the dough. Yet, instead of seeing that as weakness, I see it as a reminder that nothing lasts forever. And that's what makes it precious. Addiction taught me how fragile life is. Age teaches me how beautiful that fragility can be. So if you're watching this, here's the lesson I want to pass on. Don't waste time wishing for a different past. Build the best future you can with the time you have left. Whether you're 20 or 60, it's never too late to start again. I am living proof. At 60, I don't see myself as a woman who wasted years. I see myself as a woman who turned broken. Years into a foundation for something lasting. And you can too. One of the greatest surprises of my journey is how much people value authenticity. For years I hid my past. I thought if customers, investors, or even neighbors knew the truth, that I was once a trembling addict who nearly lost everything, they'd never respect me. So in the beginning I wore a mask. I dressed sharp, spoke with confidence, and pretended I had it all figured out. But deep inside, I was terrified that someone would expose me. Then one day, during a local TV interview about my bakery, the reporter asked me, "Margaret, what inspired you to start this business?" I froze. My polished answer was ready, but instead, something in me cracked. I looked straight at the camera and said, "Truth is, I was an addict. This bakery was born out of my recovery. Every pie is a reminder that broken things can be made whole." I expected silence, maybe even judgment. But what happened next changed my life. Customers started pouring in, not just for pies, but to share their stories. Mothers told me about children in rehab. Veterans spoke about their battles with alcohol. Strangers wrote letters saying, "My honesty gave them courage." That day I learned, your scars can be someone else's map. From then on, I stopped hiding. I spoke openly at schools, churches, even boardrooms. And each time I saw the same thing, people leaning in, not away. Because deep down, everyone is fighting something. When you share your truth, you give them permission to face theirs. That became part of my mission, to use my voice as much as my business. Of course, not everyone understood. Some investors walked away saying my story was too messy for their brand. But I didn't beg them to stay. Because here's what I know now. If someone can't respect the road you've traveled, they don't deserve to walk the road you're building. Sharing my truth also taught me the power of vulnerability in leadership. When my employees see me admit mistakes, they feel safe to admit theirs. When I share my struggles, they share theirs. And together, we solve them. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the glue that binds people together. So if you're listening to this, here's my lesson. Don't be ashamed of your scars. Don't bury your past so deep that no one can learn from it. What once nearly destroyed you can become the very thing that saves someone else. My empire isn't just pies. It's testimony baked into crust and filling. And at 60, I wouldn't trade that truth for all the polished lies in the world. As my business grew, people started calling me a success story. They looked at the headlines, the factories, the smiling photos with employees, and they thought it was all glory. But the truth? Success doesn't protect you from struggle. It just changes the battlefield. Addiction taught me how to fight for my life. Business taught me how to fight for my values. And aging has taught me how to fight for what truly matters. I remember sitting in my office one evening, long after everyone had gone home. The smell of baked apples still lingered in the air. On my desk were stacks of bills, legal documents, and plans for the next expansion. But instead of feeling proud, I felt tired. I thought to myself, what's all this worth if I lose the simple joys, the laughter of my grandchildren, the quiet peace of a morning coffee? That's when I realized something powerful. Success without balance is just another addiction. I started setting boundaries. No business call was more important than Sunday dinner with my family. No deal was worth sacrificing my health. I began walking every morning, listening to the birds, thanking God for another chance at life. Those simple rituals kept me grounded. And you know what? The business didn't fall apart. In fact, it flourished. Because a leader who is centered creates a company that is steady. Another lesson I learned is that failure never really disappears. It evolves. Even after decades, I've launched products that flopped, hired people who betrayed my trust, and made decisions that cost me money. But instead of seeing those failures as signs I wasn't good enough, I began to see them like I saw relapse years ago. Not the end, just feedback. Every failure carried a lesson, and every lesson became fuel for the next success. And let me tell you something else. Gratitude isn't just a habit, it's a shield. When critics attacked me, when rumors spread, when competitors tried to outshine me, I focused on gratitude. I wrote down the names of employees who turned their lives around, the customers who came back week after week, the family that stood by me even when I was at my lowest. Gratitude reminded me that I already had everything I once begged for. At 60, I'm not chasing the next big thing. I'm chasing depth, deeper relationships, deeper impact, deeper peace. My empire is not just built on pies. It's built on perspective. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this: don't confuse more with better. True success is not about how high you climb, but how steady you stand when the winds blow. When I was younger, I thought the American dream was about money, houses, and cars. That's what I chased after sobriety, thinking if I built something big enough, it would fill the emptiness inside. But at 60, I've learned the real American dream isn't about possessions. It's about freedom. Freedom from addiction, freedom from fear, and freedom to live with purpose. One moment brought this lesson home to me more than any other. A few years ago, I was invited to give a speech at a high school where many kids came from broken homes. I stood on that stage, looking at their faces. Some curious, some skeptical, some already carrying the heavy weight of the streets. Instead of giving them a polished speech about business, I told them the raw truth. I told them how I once slept in my car, how I almost drank myself to death, and how shame nearly convinced me I wasn't worth saving. Then I told them how small daily choices, choosing sobriety, choosing honesty, choosing discipline, rebuilt my life brick by brick. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one girl raised her hand and whispered, "Does that mean I can start over too?" Tears filled my eyes, because in that moment I realized my greatest legacy wouldn't be pies, or buildings, or bank accounts. It would be the hope planted in hearts like hers. That's the gift of survival, turning your pain into someone else's permission to rise. I've met veterans scarred by war, mothers broken by grief, young men crushed by addiction. And every time I share my story, I watch something light up in their eyes. Not because I'm special, but because my story proves the impossible is possible. But let me tell you this, hope alone isn't enough. You need discipline. You need to do the work, even when no one claps, even when no one believes. Addiction taught me how dangerous excuses can be. Business taught me how powerful persistence can be. Put those together, and you get transformation. Now, when I walk into one of my factories and see hundreds of people employed, when I watch shipments of Maggie's pies roll out to supermarkets across the country, I smile, not because of pride, but because of gratitude. Gratitude that a woman once considered lost is now a builder of futures. So here's my lesson to you. Don't let your past define your destiny. Let it refine it. Your pain can be the seed of your purpose. And when you embrace that truth, you'll discover that real success isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. If you've stayed with me this long, I want to leave you with the ending I never thought I'd live to see. Because truthfully, at 30, I didn't think I'd make it to 40. At 40, I was still patching together the pieces of my life. At 50, I was running faster than I thought possible, afraid that if I slowed down, I'd fall apart. And now, at 60, I've learned the greatest lesson of all. Peace isn't found in running. It's found in resting in who you've become. Addiction once convinced me I was worthless. Recovery taught me I was capable. Business taught me I was strong. But life taught me I was never alone. Every mentor, every customer, every employee, every family member who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, they are all part of this empire. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to us. Last year, we celebrated the company's 30th anniversary. I stood on a stage in front of hundreds of employees, their families, and my own children and grandchildren. As I looked out at the crowd, I felt something I can't quite put into words. A wave of gratitude so deep, it brought me to tears. I realized that my story wasn't just about pies or profits. It was about redemption, about showing that broken people can rise, that second chances are real, and that no one is beyond saving. That night, when the lights dimmed and the music faded, my granddaughter tugged my sleeve and asked, "Grandma, are you happy?" I bent down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "More than happy. I'm free." So here's my final lesson. Freedom is the true empire. Freedom from the chains of addiction. Freedom to forgive yourself and others. Freedom to love without fear. To serve without keeping score. To live without regret. That's the kind of wealth no market crash can steal. No competitor can outshine. No storm can wash away. At 60 years old, I am not defined by the years I lost. I am defined by the empire I built from them. An empire of second chances, of faith, of resilience, of love. My name is Margaret Johnson, and if my story proves anything, it's this. No matter how far you've fallen, no matter how broken you feel, it is never too late to rise, rebuild, and rejoice. Because sometimes the most powerful empires aren't built in boardrooms or stock markets. They're built in kitchens, in community, and in hearts that refuse to give up. And that, my friend, is the legacy I leave. People often ask me, "Margaret, do you ever feel like you wasted too many years in addiction?" And for a long time, the answer in my heart was yes. I grieved over lost birthdays, broken promises, and opportunities I threw away. But one day, sitting in a recovery meeting, an old woman with a gentle smile said something that changed my perspective. She told me, "Nothing is wasted if you use it to help someone else." That single sentence reshaped my entire outlook. Suddenly, my past wasn't just a burden. It was a resource. Every mistake became a lesson I could teach. Every scar became proof that healing is possible. Even the darkest nights became lanterns for someone else's path. That's why I never hide where I've been anymore. My past is not my prison. It's my testimony. And this applies to business too. I used to fear making mistakes with my company. What if I launched the wrong product? What if I trusted the wrong person? But then I realized, mistakes in business are like relapses in recovery. Painful, yes. But if you pay attention, they can guide you to something stronger. For example, I once tried to expand into frozen dinners. It flopped. Customers didn't want them. For a while, I felt embarrassed, like I had failed. But that failure pushed me back to my roots, back to pies. And pies, not dinners, became the foundation of our empire. Sometimes failure isn't a wall. It's a compass pointing you back to where you belong. Now, when I sit with young entrepreneurs, I tell them, don't run from failure. Study it. Learn from it. Use it. Just like recovery, success isn't about never stumbling. It's about standing up faster each time you fall. At 60, I see my past not as wasted years, but as invested years. Invested in wisdom, compassion, and resilience. And if you're listening, I want you to know, whatever pain you've lived through, it can still be turned into purpose. Nothing is wasted. Not one moment. One of the greatest lessons recovery gave me is the power of routine. Addiction thrives in chaos. Sobriety thrives in structure. When I first got clean, I hated the idea of waking up at the same time, going to meetings, writing gratitude lists. It felt boring, even pointless. But over time, I realized that routine wasn't a prison. It was freedom. Freedom from the unpredictability of my cravings. Freedom from the chaos that used to run my life. When I started my bakery, I leaned heavily on that same discipline. I woke up at 4 a.m. every morning. No excuses. Rain, snow, exhaustion. It didn't matter. While others were still asleep, I was rolling dough, preparing fillings and building the habits that would one day carry my business. People often think success comes from big breaks or lucky chances. But no, success comes from small, repeated actions done faithfully over time. I remember one winter morning when the heater broke, and the shop was freezing cold. My breath was visible in the air as I mixed flour and sugar with trembling hands. Every instinct told me to go back to bed. But I stayed. I baked. And by sunrise, a line of customers waited outside for fresh pies. That morning taught me something. Commitment is stronger than comfort. Even now, decades later, I still keep a simple daily rhythm. Coffee, gratitude list, walk, work, family, rest. It's not glamorous, but it's what keeps me steady. And I tell the young people all the time, don't underestimate the power of consistency. Discipline may feel heavy, but regret is heavier. This principle saved my company more than once. When trends shifted, when competitors tried new flashy marketing, when the economy wobbled, I didn't panic. I stuck to the basics: quality, service, honesty. While others chased shortcuts, I stayed consistent. And that's why we survived storms that wiped out bigger companies. So here's the truth. The empire I built wasn't born out of brilliance or talent. It was built brick by brick, day by day, through the quiet power of routine. At 60, I no longer crave excitement the way I once did. I crave peace And peace, I've learned, comes not from chasing highs but from honoring habits. So if you're listening, remember this. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Build routines strong enough to carry you even when motivation is gone. That's how you rise. That's how you stay free. There's a word I used to hate. Forgiveness. When I was deep in addiction, I hurt so many people. My children, my parents, my friends. I lied, I stole, I disappeared for days. And when I finally got sober, the weight of guilt nearly crushed me. I thought, how could they ever forgive me? How could I ever forgive myself? For years, I carried that shame like chains. Every time I looked at my children, I saw disappointment. Every time I walked into church, I felt unworthy. But one evening, at a recovery meeting, a man stood up and said, "Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about choosing not to be imprisoned by it." That sentence pierced my soul. I realized I had been serving a life sentence in my own mind. And slowly, I began to practice forgiveness. I apologized to my children, not once, but many times. I showed them with actions, not just words, that I was different. And over the years, their hearts softened. The first time my son hugged me and said, "Mom, I'm proud of you," I wept like a child. That moment meant more than any business deal I've ever signed. But forgiveness wasn't just for others. It was for me too. I had to learn to forgive myself for being broken, for being human, for losing years to addiction. Without self-forgiveness, I would have sabotaged everything I built. This same principle shaped how I run my company. Employees make mistakes, sometimes big ones. I could fire them, shut the door, and move on. But I remember what it felt like to be given a second chance. So instead, I built a culture of grace. If someone owns their mistake and is willing to grow, I give them another shot. And you know what? Those second chances often turn into my strongest leaders. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward, even when the past still hurts. And in business, just like in life, that choice can transform everything. At 60, I don't measure success in money or fame. I measure it in reconciled relationships. I measure it in hugs from my children, laughter with my grandchildren, and trust rebuilt over time. That is the true wealth of my empire. So if you're listening right now, hear me clearly. Don't let unforgiveness chain you to your past. Free yourself. Free others. Because an empire built on bitterness will crumble, but an empire built on forgiveness will last for generations. There's something I learned late in life. Leadership is not about power. It's about responsibility. In my addiction, I ran from responsibility. I avoided bills. I avoided my children's needs. I avoided my own truth. But recovery forced me to face myself. And once I started the business, I realized leadership is just another form of accountability. When you lead people, their lives depend on your decisions. Every paycheck, every schedule, every opportunity. It all flows from the choices you make. That's a heavy weight. I remember the first time I had to let someone go. I sat in my office trembling because I knew my decision would affect their family, their rent, their future. It broke my heart. But leadership means making hard choices with compassion, not avoiding them out of fear. Over time, I learned to see leadership as service, instead of asking, what can my employees do for me? I began asking, what can I do to help them thrive? That shift changed everything. Productivity went up, morale improved, and loyalty became unshakable. People don't work their hardest for a paycheck. They work their hardest when they know they're valued. This lesson echoes something I learned in recovery. My sponsor used to say, if you want to keep your sobriety, give it away. Meaning, if you want to stay sober, You must help others on the path. In business, it's the same. If you want to grow, help others grow. When you lift others, you life yourself. Of course, not everyone agreed with my approach. Some competitors mocked me for hiring people with messy pasts. They said I was too soft to last in the cutthroat world of business. But let me tell you, empires built on fear may rise quickly, but they collapse just as fast. Empires built on service endure. At 60, I see leadership not as a throne, but as a table, a place where everyone has a seat, where everyone's voice matters, where everyone is part of something bigger. And that's the culture I want to leave behind. So if you're listening, here's my lesson. Don't chase titles. Don't chase authority. Chase impact. True leaders don't create followers. They create more leaders. And when your empire is full of leaders, it will outlive you. That's the kind of legacy worth building. When I first got sober, I thought freedom meant never struggling again. I imagined a life without temptation, without fear, without mistakes. But now, at 60, I know that's not how freedom works. Freedom isn't the absence of struggle. It's the ability to face struggle without being destroyed by it. There are still days when the cravings whisper. There are still nights when doubt creeps in, when I wonder if I've done enough, if I've truly made peace with my past. But the difference now is this. I don't run from those thoughts. I meet them head on. Recovery gave me tools, and I use them daily. I pray. I write. I call someone I trust. I remind myself that one bad day doesn't erase years of growth. This same mindset shaped how I survived in business. I can't tell you how many times I felt like giving up. When bills were overdue, when lawsuits came, when a new competitor opened down the street. The easy road would have been quitting. But freedom meant fighting through those storms without losing myself. Every obstacle I survived made me stronger, more resilient, more capable. One of the hardest battles I faced was burnout. There was a season when I worked 16-hour days, sleeping in my office, chasing growth at any cost. My body broke down, my mind grew numb, and I felt dangerously close to slipping back into old destructive patterns. That's when my daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, I'd rather have you than your empire." Those words hit me like a hammer. From that moment, I promised myself, I will not trade my health or my soul for success. I slowed down, hired more help, and focused on balance. And ironically, that's when the business grew even more. Because a healthy leader creates a healthy company. So here's the lesson. Freedom is not about escaping struggle, but about learning how to stand in the middle of it without breaking. Whether it's addiction, business, or life, storms will come. The question is, will you be rooted deep enough to withstand them? At 60, I can say with certainty, I am free. Not because life is easy, but because I no longer let difficulty define me. And if I can carry that kind of freedom after decades of chains, then so can you. There's another truth I've discovered with age. Wealth is not measured in dollars, but in relationships. Addiction once stole every meaningful connection from me. I lied to my parents. I abandoned my children. I burned bridges with friends. I was surrounded by people, but I was utterly alone. When I got sober, rebuilding trust was the hardest part. Money can be earned back. Time cannot. Trust must be rebuilt one honest action at a time. I remember the first time I picked up my granddaughter from school. Her little hand wrapped around mine, her smile full of trust. That moment was worth more than every penny I've ever made. In business, I applied that same principle. I told my employees from day one, this company will not just be about pies. It will be about people. I kept my word. I showed up at their weddings. I sat with them in hospitals. I helped pay for college tuition when they couldn't. And because of that, they worked not just for me but with me. We became family. Customers, too, became part of that family. I never saw them as dollar signs. I saw them as stories. Mrs. Thompson, who came every Sunday after church for a slice of pecan pie because it reminded her of her late husband. Young couples who shared their first date in our cafe. Veterans who said our pies tasted like home. Those relationships built loyalty stronger than any advertisement. But let me tell you, relationships require vulnerability. And vulnerability can be scary, especially in business. There were times I worried that being too open about my past would make people walk away. Some did. But the ones who stayed, they stayed for life. Because real connection isn't built on perfection. It's built on honesty. Now at 60, I look around and realize my true empire is not the factories or the storefronts. It's the people who stood by me, the family I rebuilt, the employees who grew into leaders, the customers whose lives touched mine. That's wealth you can't buy. Wealth no recession can take away. So here's my lesson for you. Protect your relationships. Nurture them. Invest in them like gold. Because at the end of your life, you won't count the money in your bank. You'll count the hands holding yours. And that, my friend, is the richest legacy you can leave behind. Looking back, one of the most powerful tools I gained in recovery, and later in business, was gratitude. It sounds simple, maybe even cliché, but I promise you, gratitude is a weapon. Addiction made me focus only on what I lacked. More alcohol, more pills, more escape. Gratitude shifted my eyes toward what I already had, and that shift saved my life. In my earliest days of sobriety, my sponsor told me to write down 3 things I was grateful for every morning. At first, I resisted. I thought, what's there to be grateful for? I've ruined everything. But I forced myself to write anyway. Some days all I could write was, I'm breathing. I have a roof. I have one more chance. Over time, those small lists grew into something powerful. Gratitude trained my heart to see possibility instead of despair. When I started my bakery, gratitude became my fuel. I didn't complain about my broken oven. I thanked God I had customers to serve. I didn't curse the long hours. I thanked Him that I had the strength to work. That mindset transformed struggle into opportunity, and customers could feel it. Gratitude is contagious. It seeps into the way you greet people, the way you bake, the way you lead. Even now, as the company has grown, I keep the same practice. Every board meeting begins with each leader sharing one thing they're grateful for. It changes the atmosphere instantly. Instead of focusing on problems, we focus on possibilities. Instead of fear, we feel faith. But gratitude isn't just about the good. It's about reframing the hard. When my warehouse burned down, I forced myself to write, I'm grateful no one was hurt. I'm grateful we have insurance. I'm grateful this will make us stronger. And it did. Gratitude didn't erase the pain, but it gave me strength to endure it. At 60, gratitude has become my compass. When doubt whispers, I answer with thanks. When fear knocks, I answer with thanks. Gratitude reminds me that I already hold in my hands what I once begged for. So if you're listening, here's my challenge. Start a gratitude list today. Don't wait for life to be perfect. Write about the breath in your lungs, the roof above you, the second chance you've been given. Because gratitude won't just change your mood. It will change your entire direction. And who knows? Like me, you may look back one day and realize gratitude turned your broken past into a beautiful empire. There's another lesson I've carried with me through these years. The importance of faith. Now, I'm not here to preach, but I can't deny what faith did for me. When I was at my lowest, when every door seemed closed, faith was the only thing that whispered, keep going. I remember nights in rehab when I shook so badly, I thought my body would break. I begged God to take the pain away. He didn't take it immediately, But he gave me just enough strength to get through the next minute. And sometimes, that's all you need. The strength for one more minute. That same faith carried me through business storms. When banks refused loans, when competitors tried to crush me, when fire and debt threatened to take it all, I prayed. Not for miracles, but for clarity, for courage, for wisdom. And more often than not, the answers came in small ways. A loyal customer placing a big order, an employee with a brilliant idea, a neighbor showing up to help clean rubble. Faith didn't hand me success. It taught me to see the blessings hidden inside the struggle. I know some people don't believe, and that's okay. But everyone needs something bigger than themselves, whether you call it God, community, or purpose. Addiction is too strong to fight alone. Life is too heavy to carry by yourself. We all need a foundation outside our own strength. My faith also shaped the way I lead. I don't just see my employees as workers. I see them as souls. Souls with stories, with pain, with dreams. And when you lead from that perspective, you stop chasing only profit. You start chasing impact. You start asking, how can I make their lives better, not just their paychecks bigger? Faith also taught me humility. I didn't build this empire alone. I had help, divine and human. And every day I remind myself, pride destroys, humility builds. At 60, I see faith not as religion, but as relationship. Relationship with God, with people, with life itself. It's the glue that held me together when everything else fell apart. So if you're listening, here's the lesson. Find something bigger than yourself to lean on. Because when the storms come, and they will, you'll need more than willpower. You'll need hope. You'll need faith. You'll need something that whispers, keep going. You're not done yet. As I grow older, I think more about legacy. Not just what I've built, but what I'll leave behind when I'm gone. Addiction once made me believe my legacy would be nothing but pain and broken promises. But recovery, business, and faith have rewritten that story. Now my legacy isn't destruction, it's restoration. I've learned that legacy isn't measured in money or buildings. Those things can vanish. Legacy is measured in people. In the employees who tell me, Margaret, because you believed in me, I believed in myself. In the children who once watched me stumble drunk, but now watch me lead with purpose. In the grandchildren who will grow up knowing their grandmother didn't quit when life got hard. One of my proudest moments came when my daughter told me, Mom, you broke the cycle. She was right. Addiction runs deep in families, passed like a curse from one generation to the next. But by getting sober and staying sober, by building instead of destroying, I cut that chain. My grandchildren will never know the chaos I once lived in. They'll inherit not addiction, but hope. That's the true power of redemption. It doesn't just change you, it changes everyone after you. And maybe that's the greatest empire anyone can build. A new future for those who come next. Still, I remain aware of my fragility. I am not invincible. I know that one wrong step could undo years of progress. That's why I stay vigilant. I attend meetings even now. I surround myself with people who hold me accountable. And I never forget the pain of my lowest days. Memory is a guardrail. It reminds me where I've been and warns me never to return. And let me tell you this. Gratitude grows deeper with age. Every laugh around the dinner table, every pie that leaves our ovens, every letter from someone who says my story gave them hope. These are treasures more valuable than gold. At 60, I see clearly. The empire I built is not really mine. It belongs to everyone who walked this road with me, everyone who believed, everyone who forgave. I am just the steward. And that, perhaps, is the greatest honor of all. So if you're listening, here's my lesson. Don't just chase success. Chase legacy. Build something that outlives you. Because the greatest wealth you'll ever leave behind is not money, but the lives you touched. So here I am, 60 years old, looking back at a life that could have ended in an alley, in a hospital bed, or behind bars. But instead I sit here surrounded by family, employees, and a business that carries my name. Not because I was perfect, but because I refused to stay broken. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. It is never too late. I don't care if you're 20 or 70, if you're in the middle of addiction, or standing in the rubble of failure. Your story isn't finished. You are one decision away from a new direction. That's how my journey began. Not with a grand plan, not with a miracle, but with one decision. I won't give up today. Life is built in days, not decades. Every sober day stacked on the next. Every honest choice layered on top of yesterday's. Every act of service, every moment of gratitude, every step forward. These become bricks. And one day, without realizing it, you'll look back and see that you've built something solid. You've built your empire. But let me be clear. The true empire isn't the money, the buildings, or even the brand. My true empire is the freedom I carry inside. Freedom to wake up without shame. Freedom to look my children in the eye. Freedom to laugh with my grandchildren without fear of losing them. Freedom to serve others with a heart unchained. I am Margaret Johnson, and I stand here not as a victim of addiction, but as a victor over it. Not as a woman defined by her failures, but as a woman refined by them. And I share this story not for applause, but for hope. That someone listening today will realize their lowest point can become their turning point. So if you're in the dark, hear me. You are not alone. If you've fallen, get up. If you've failed, try again. And if you think it's too late, look at me. It's never too late. Because broken things can be made whole. Lost years can be redeemed. And from the ashes of despair, you can build not just a life, but a legacy. That is my story. That is my empire. And if I can rise, so can you.